1. What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Brazos Sports Preps Cast, special edition of the podcast. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined always by Jake Weiss and Andrew Tinio. Guys, it's been about a little over a month since the end of football season.
Yeah.
We got to end our year again at AT&T Stadium. Heartbreaking loss for the Franklin Lions. And since then, we've been putting together our annual All-Brazos Valley football team, and it is running in Saturday's paper. So just joining on a little bit to talk about the team and some of the standout players and teams in the area this year.
Well, I gotta say first, before you said it's a special episode, I'm just looking around like, man, this is a pretty nice little room we're in here. It's a nice little backdrop, different than the studio backdrop too. That's what else makes it a special episode.
In all transparency, we got locked out of our studio, so we had to improvise.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, hey, it was kind of a year of firsts for some of the Brazos Valley teams. Let's start with who we picked as our team of the year, Jake.
Yeah, well, it's one of those, you talk about the first. This is a team that kind of exemplifies that. St. Joseph made the TAP State semifinals for the first time in program history. Went 11-1. Pretty hard to top that. I mean, going somewhere you've never been before. I know they were a little disappointed, season ended at Baytown Christian, but hey, made a round you've never been before. 11-1. Coming back to, they won district again this year. I know, they had won district the year before, but they're used to winning district as well. But hey, got back to that winning way, went undefeated in district. A lot to be proud of for the Eagles over there.
And I was there for that state semifinal game, getting to go out there and really exemplified the guts that they had throughout the game. They trailed, they were down a couple scores at certain points, but the defense really locked in. The offense kind of helped them get that to where they had that chance late in the game to win the game. So when you talk about guts and exemplifying what type of team they were, even though they lost that game, I could tell what type of team they were just based off of the way they pulled out of those deficits they had.
Yeah, had a standout senior class, of course, led by quarterback Mark Mishler. If you look at the All-BV 6-man team, you're gonna find half of the 8-man roster. We put 8 on there just to put a little flexibility, but they got 4 guys on there. You got Mark Mishler and Bryant Hutka, who, we didn't get to talk about him enough. He has been a stalwart on that team. And then, of course, we got Lucas Ramirez and Peter Navarre on there as well.
And hey, give them credit too. You look at that team, it's some seniors, of course, but covered's not bare. Peter and Lucas are both juniors. They'll be back next year as well.
Right. And then just real quick, while we're looking at our 6-man team, had a standout player at BB Chia, Jake Pote. I don't think the Mustangs were able to reach maybe their potential this year. Got bounced kind of early in the private school playoffs. And then, of course, we had 3 Allen Academy Rams. Ethan Lucas, mentioned his name quite a bit. Eli Dawson. And you talk about guys coming back.
Rusty Lai McMurray.
Rusty Lai McMurray. Coach Adams, he's got to feel good about getting Rusty back next year.
Of course. And I got to say, too, you look at this list, the other thing that you mentioned Jake Poe, for example, and some of those other guys, it's funny. I know, obviously, it's the All-Brazos Valley team, but, we went out and covered that the 6-man All-Star game that they had. And it's funny, you're just looking at that, your list, you're like, oh, yeah, that guy, and that guy, we're all on the All-Star team. Like, wow, we just saw them all out there.
Yeah. Well, hey, Coach of the Year, man, this was a tough one to pick. But I do feel good about who we landed on for our Coach of the Year. Andrew?
It is Brandon Schmidt of A&M Consolidated. I felt the job he did this year, and kind of the building blocks you saw throughout the year. It wasn't just this team was great on paper beginning of the year, and it kind of showed it. You had the offensive line growth. You had the defense kind of create its own personality in a way. You had, your quarterback getting confidence, and then the passing game starts working to associate with the run game. So I feel like the way everything came together, to me, it was, one of the easier choices, in my opinion, was to get him as Coach of the Year. So,
Jake?
Hey, not a hard pick at all. It's funny, too, because, last year we had Stoney as Coach of the Year. Now we got another first-year coach. So, I guess, too, hey, I know Navasota's looking for a coach, so maybe, three for three, maybe potentially next year. But no, Coach Schmidt, great job with what they did. They reached 4th round of the playoffs for first time since 2013. you lose the state runner-up, Smithson Valley. No shame in that. I mean, they made it all the way there. Really phenomenal job he did with the Tigers this year, taking them to a place kind of similar to St. Joe's. Took them to a place, they had been there before, but it'd been, a decade? So pretty solid job they did out there at Consol.
Well, maybe the most interesting debate was who we were going to pick for our player of the year. And so let's go through a little bit of the process of how we decided who the player of the year was. We did something different this year.
I was going to say, we talked about those first.
Talk about first. We did something
too.
for the first time. And I actually really like this because, how we pick the rest of our team is, we'll reach out to coaches and say, hey, send us your top 3 to 5 players that you think would be worthy of being on an all-area team, and they'll send us their nominations. We compile the list, and then we go position by position and kind of pick the best of the best, right?
As a staff, yeah.
And so, that is an in-house deal, but, we don't always get to get around and see a bunch of games. Sometimes we cover a team very consistently, which is a good thing. We get to know those teams really well, their players really well, and that helps when we start talking about these things. But, we invited our local media partners from the TV stations to kind of help us out. And so, I think there were at least 10, maybe 11 folks that voted on this, and we said, all right, we're giving you 4 names, and you got to rank them in order, and then we did a point system on who was first, second, third, and fourth. So our 4 nominees, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order so that we don't have it all mixed up, and now I'm trying to think what alphabetical order would be.
I was going to say, I'm impressed if you already had
said the 4 random.
We had Jaden Jackson from Franklin, Arrington Maiden from College Station, Trace Meadows from A&M Consolidated, and Coben Zan from Bremont. That's alphabetical order, so we didn't tease it too much.
Well, I was gonna say, if you had started with Coben, I would just be like, buddy, like we gotta,
So let's get a little drum roll. And the player of the year is Jake.
Jaden Jackson, Franklin.
Jaden Jackson from Franklin.
I thought you were gonna be the one to say.
No, I wasn't gonna do it. Yeah, Jaden, and let me tell you, when it came down to the point system, Jaden beat Trace Meadows by a hair. It was really hard to pick between those two guys. Yeah. You have a 2,000-yard rusher who really carried his team in a lot of ways behind a really good offensive line, by the way. If you look at our first and second team offenses, you're going to see some Franklin Lions on that offensive line. He carries his team to a state championship game appearance again, but on the other hand, you have Trace Meadows, the heart and soul of that just tenacious Tiger defense, right? Who did everything, even in the playoffs, had to come in and play a little wildcat quarterback, try and get things kick-started in a tough battle against Smithson Valley. But in the end, we voted for Jaden Jackson, and I think either of those guys would have been worthy, but Jaden's definitely worthy in that spot.
Well, and quick credit to both of those guys too. You talk about Jaden carrying 2,000-yard rushing. Hey, man, I mean, I know I watched him. We watched him in that Edna game too. He made some plays on defense too. Both of those guys.
Yeah.
Both of those guys, even Trace too. I know he probably just tell you he's just a linebacker, but he can pretty much play. I mean, he played both ways. He punt return. I mean, both of those guys kind of were two-way stars, if you will. I know I know Jaden does play both ways, but
not to
Trace
mention
as well.
Not to mention Trace and special teams at times. Pretty lethal punt returner when it comes down to it as well. Trace, of course, going to play at UTEP. We wish him well. Another guy
moved in too, I think.
Moved in. Another guy who just moved in. Actually ran into him on his last night here. Was Arrington Maiden.
Really?
You got Wings and More. Great choice, Arrington.
Always.
If you got to have one. If I'm on my, this is my last meal in College Station, I'm going to Wings and More. So.
And now I want to go back and look when we did our, Andrew, Alex, we all do those little features. We do the features each week, and we usually do the 5. I'm kind of curious now what Arrington, if we asked him what his favorite restaurant was, I'm kind of curious.
I think you wrote the story, so I think you
I should know this, but I don't remember. But I'm like, no, I wonder if Wings and More, you got to go to his favorite one more time. But
well, hey, Arrington, I mean, what a year he had, right? I mean, a guy that last year really didn't find his way till probably the second to last week of the regular season,
Yeah.
and then kind of helped will the Cougars to a state title run, championship game appearance run, I should say. And this year, really had total command of that offense and really grew not just as a player but as a leader. And I think that was reflected in the story that you did on him. And so, really, really talented quarterback. Wouldn't be surprised if we see his name pop up when he's playing for Memphis here in a couple years.
Hey, no kidding. I mean, they got a senior quarterback coming back or a fifth year?
Yeah,
I mean,
Seth Hennigan.
Yeah,
will be coming back.
I believe Arrington's probably a backup as of now. I mean,
yeah, he's probably either second or third string.
Yeah.
So, and then of course a guy that, man, this kid just had a year.
Yeah.
Coben Zan. Okay.
Wide receiver turned quarterback.
Wide receiver, defensive end turned quarterback. Because if you look at our first team defense, Braylon Wortham, when he transferred from Bremond to College Station, broke a school record with interceptions this season, single season. And so Coben steps in and helps the Bremond Tigers reach a regional final and nearly beat Fall City.
I was gonna say, you were at that game, right?
Yeah.
Came down to what, 2-point conversion or extra
Yeah.
point? Yeah.
So, really impressive season by him.
And I think he had 1,000 yards both through the air and on the ground. Which, hey, I think that's pretty impressive for a guy who, last year before was catching passes. All of a sudden, hey, he's not just showing off his speed because we knew he had speed with his legs because of his days as a receiver. But then, hey, go out there and throw 1,000 yards too. Throw for over 1,000. Pretty dang impressive.
Well, and he's not going to win a 100-meter dash probably, but he's so big, tough to bring down. I mean, just a really tough guy to bring down, just a pure athlete. Guys, as we go through this first and second team offense and defense for the All-BV team, what maybe sticks out to you guys a little bit?
I'll go first.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of a wild card pick here, but I'm just looking at our two kicker selections. Man, two guys that I thought pretty dang talented kickers. Colton Schmeller, I saw in his first year as a starter, and then Steven over at Madisonville. Man, I mean, I know Steven had been his second year as kicking for Madisonville, but man, two guys that I don't know. I came away real impressed with every time I heard their name called because. I know Madisonville, they were pretty popular in our Player of the Week poll, but man, yeah, both of those guys, like every time, sometimes you get a little nervous when they go or you think to yourself, oh, are they going to take the field goal here? You're kind of doing the math. At least I am. I'm trying to do the math in my head, and both times those guys' names, took out of the field, I never was like, oh man, I was always like, yeah, makes sense to me. We're about to kick this thing.
Yeah. I think for me, what stood out looking through first and second team was how deep the secondary was this year. You look at the, Hadrago, Wortham, Darnell, all those guys were captains of, it seemed like captains of their defense. And you even go to the second team, guys like Tony Hamilton, guys like Jackson Caffey. Those are guys that, would see coming into a game as big notable players. And you just look at it and you realize, like, wow, we had a really deep secondary group when, a lot of attention may go to other areas. Corners and safeties weren't called out very often. That's for a good thing if you're one of those two positions. So that was the group that kind of stood out to me, just flexing the depth of how deep they were this year.
The thing that stands out to me, if you look at our first team offense and defense, you're going to see them. It's the Franklin Five. The Franklin Five are all on the first team. You got Braden Smith, Colby Smith, Major Kimbrough, Braden Urie, and Devin Hadrago. I mean, you talk about a class right there.
Yeah.
And just a group of winners. I know they didn't end up on top in the very last game, but I mean, they really. I mean, you go back. These guys have been on this team quite a bit.
4 years, all 4 years on varsity. I think too. Heck, I mean, I know, like you said, it didn't end the way they wanted, but I think if you told them probably in 8th grade, hey, you're going to be at the end of your high school career, you're going to have won 2 state titles in 4 years. I think
and played for 2 more.
Yeah, played for 2 more. I think you take that deal.
Yeah. So, pretty impressive list on that first team, just going down the line. Hey, I'll ask you guys maybe a final question here. We've got some returners that are going to be back. Who are maybe a couple guys on this team that you're like, I got my eye on him going into next year. A guy that really kind of took a leap this season.
I mean, I'm feel like I'm gonna cheat here, but I gotta go Terrence Lewis. I mean, anytime you touch the ball, you were scared he was gonna go for 70 yards. I mean, it was that type of game. I was there for the Hutto game, the season finale. I think he went close like 300 receiving yards, and that game just gets ingrained into my head in a way to think, oh man, this kid, he gets another year in the system. He gets another year of football. He may do some special things next year for Brian. So Terrence Lewis is the guy I'm keeping an eye on.
Jake?
Oh man, I was hoping I could come back. I could go third. I'm still looking. There's a couple names.
Here, I can go first.
There we go. Thank you.
I really got my eye on Jacoby Dixon, and I know
Ooh.
they're kind of on the periphery of our coverage area down in Brenham, but if they're in a district again with Rudder, we'll be getting to cover a Brenham game or two. Man, this guy might be the next big thing out of the Brazos Valley. I mean, the season that he had with the Cubs, I mean, he seems to be like he could be the real deal. So Coach Youngs has got to feel good having him in the backfield to build around going into next season.
And I think too, I'm just kind of taking a quick last little glance here. I'm pretty sure he's our only freshman on the team as well.
Yeah,
I think a big credit to him as well. I mean, if you back his numbers already back it up and his play already backs it up, but you're just looking at the list and I'm like, yeah, he's the only freshman too. Like we got 3 more years of Jacoby Dixon highlights potentially.
Well, and here's a guy that was a freshman that didn't make the team because we had a lot of depth at that position. Cooper Murr from Brazos Christian, right? Jackson Caffey started the year at quarterback. They moved him to more of an athlete role, it seemed.
Yeah.
He's on the team, of course, and those two guys, man, they can put up some numbers. So. Coach Washington's gotta feel good about having those two guys back, and the buy-in at Brazos Christian's really gone up the last couple years.
I was gonna say, I remember you wrote about this in the preseason, which I feel weird. We're referencing the preseason now. We're a month after the season, I believe too their numbers went up last year in terms of how many kids.
Oh yeah.
So it'll be interesting if that number goes up. Once again next year.
So did you ever say who you're looking out for next year?
Oh, jeez. So we can just be like, hey, see everybody.
Come on,
Thanks
Jake.
for watching our episode. Oh, man. There's so many.
How about that guy? We haven't even talked about him.
Yeah, I was thinking, my eyes, there was 4 guys that my eyes were drawn to, and Tank Scott was one of them, man. I really like what he did at Bremont this year. He's just a sophomore, kind of took over that lead tailback role and just really powered his way. You look at that first team offense too. He's the youngest guy on there, the only sophomore we got. Rushed for over 1,000 yards. It's kind of similar to the Jacoby Dixon situation in my book, where it's like, man, we got this guy for 2 more years. Kind of can't wait to see what he does next, because you rush for 1,000 yards as a sophomore. Kind of feels like you got nowhere to go but up. And I'm interested to see what he can do. I know they lose Coben. He was a senior, so it'll be interesting to see next preseason what Bremont's doing on offense. But hey, Tank Scott, not a bad option to have back there in the backfield, and as a pass catcher too. I don't know if we included his stats there, but he got a couple passes as well, 2 out of the backfield.
We're gonna have a pretty good running back group this next year. When you look around and what people have coming back, so it'll be a fun 2024 season, and hey. UIL realignment's coming around the corner. We'll see who's in whose district.
Jeez.
So get ready.
You're going to remind me of that. That's coming up.
Things
February 1st.
Very different in a few weeks.
February 1st.
Gonna be. Look out for those phone calls, people. Recognize my area code.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in to this special episode of the Brazos Sports Prepscast. Be sure to view our entire All-Brazos Valley football team online at theeagle.com. Hey, and be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on high school sports here in the Brazos Valley as we move into the spring sports season. We're in the thick of basketball season. Baseball practice starts today.
Yeah.
Softball's about to start up. Soccer's getting in a groove.
5 days till district, I think it starts for them.
Yeah, it's gonna come fast and furious. The spring always does. So we're there to cover it, and we'll hope you'll read. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll see you next time.